Welcome to A Transformed Life, the podcast where we delve into the realms of overcoming anxiety, overwhelm, and finding true and lasting peace of mind. I am your host, Tiffani Cappello, clinical hypnotist and certified nutritional consultant. And in this podcast, I explore the intersection of mindset transformation, nutritional wellness, and the power of your subconscious mind. I am so thrilled to embark on this transformative journey with you. Welcome. So I'm so excited today to have Ronia Fraser with us. So Ronia is an amazing woman who helps so many people recover from narcissistic abuse. So Ronia, tell us about yourself and how you got into this work.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all.
You are very welcome.
Well, how did I get into this work? You don't get into this work unless it has happened to you. So I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse myself. And I know from firsthand experience how it is to be in it, how it is to get out it, the frustration, the hopelessness, the lack of understanding that we experience once we actually come out of it and we're looking for help. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing today, because when I was going through it, it was really, I was so determined and committed to my healing. And I was incredibly unwell at the time as a consequence of the abuse. And back then, we're talking about like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. So back then, narcissistic abuse didn't really mean anything, right? So it's not like you could go on Google like you do now and you could find anything that would even match. So it was literally like putting puzzle pieces together. And obviously, when we come out of a narcissistic relationship, we don't know what has happened to us because we don't know that something like that exists at the time. So I was really struggling with my mental health at that time, which was something that was new for me. And I was putting the puzzle pieces together, trying to figure out what the heck had happened to me. And I was very committed to get better. And I was, however, in such a bad state, I was literally clinging on to dear life, right? So I would go to therapy religiously every week and really put my everything in because I just didn't want to feel that way anymore. And if you're anything like me, if you put your time and your money and your effort into something, you want to have a result, right? And there was just nothing happening for like month and month and month. And when I said to my therapist, who was really lovely, and I was glad I had her. I had somebody in my corner who wasn't judgmental. She just didn't have the tools that I needed. And she said to me, well, this is just how your life is now. It's something you will need to accept, and we will need to figure out ways to manage it. And I'm like, well, no, I cannot accept this because literally the life I was living at that point wasn't worth living. And I knew that something had happened to me. I didn't know what it was, but I knew something had happened that turned me into this mess because I was a highly functioning person. And then overnight, I wasn't functioning at all. So clearly something had happened. So if it can go one way, of course, there's got to be a way to reverse the damage as effectively as it was caused, right? And I literally went on this mission. And I think, to be perfectly honest, because I was in a place where I literally had nothing left to lose, I was able to really dive into it. And if I had died in the process of trying to find something, I would have been fine with that as well, because there was nothing left anyway. But of course, my intention was to live, right? That was my motivation. And it was just that will to live and the incredible frustration of having to live a life with no quality whatsoever, and being so disconnected from everything and everyone, and not being functioning like a normal human being, like that incredible frustration that basically got me to really get into it and really figure it out. And that's what basically leads me to today. And today, I obviously do this for a living. I help abuse survivors from all over the world to get back on their feet and regain their mental health. And it's literally my life's mission. I could not be doing anything else.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I don't think if you've never been in a narcissistic relationship, you really can't understand. I had one. And, I got divorced a number of years ago. And then I got right into my first relationship post-divorce was with a narcissist. Of course, I didn't realize that, because you don't really realize that. You think you have found the most wonderful human on the earth. They understand how to be your ideal, to be everything that you want. And so I thought, finally, I have met the best man in the world. And I wasn't even in this relationship for a really long time. It was not years long. But I'll tell you, in the half of a year, that was all it was, a half of a year relationship, the damage to my self-esteem was immense. I mean, I don't think I entered the relationship with my self-worth intact because of the situations previous in my life that people who listen to this podcast know about, with being in a religious cult, going through a divorce. However, every shred of self-worth I had just got completely destroyed. And when I left, I felt like I was absolutely nothing. My mental health was so poor, like you had said, I absolutely could not function. It was hard for me to get through every single day. So I really do understand how necessary and needed it is for people to not only understand what they've just experienced, but to have the hope to actually know how to get out of it. So, and you specialize in this field, so you really understand. Now, if someone's listening to this, they probably already suspect, at least, that they have been in a relationship with someone who is a narcissist. But people do tend to throw out that term, towards people they don't like. How can someone really know that they're either in a relationship with a narcissist, or that a past relationship that damaged them was of that nature?
Well, there's certain indications, certain things we feel, certain things we literally say, especially in the very beginning when we don't know exactly what's happening and we don't have the language yet to express ourselves. And I think, first and foremost, every single narcissistic abuse survivor that I have met knew from the get-go that something was wrong, like something was off. The alarm bells were going off, the gut feeling was going off. But because, of course, the narcissist tangles this carrot in front of our nose, whatever it may be, right? Like something that we are so desperate for to have, whether that's feeling good enough or feeling worthy, being loved, being seen, being heard. It's usually something, along those lines. And because that narcissist, as you said, they are so good at giving us exactly what we want, what we need. That's why we then tend to overwrite that gut feeling, that instinct that actually is trying to keep us safe, right? And because also when it happens, you know nothing about it, right? So it's not like you necessarily have like a checklist, and they won't match that checklist in the beginning anyway. So because something does feel wrong, but we cannot exactly put our finger on it, what it is, we tend to just overwrite that gut feeling and go for it anyway. So every single narcissistic abuse survivor knew right from the get-go that something was off, always. And that in itself is already an indication. So anybody who's listening right now and is even questioning whether they are or they were in a narcissistic relationship, well, you actually already know. Like deep down, you already know.
That's
And
interesting.
I think what's also important to understand is that the people that get drawn in by narcissists, we are good people. We have a good heart. We care deeply. We love deeply. We are also by nature very intuitive. So when your alarm bells go off, when this gut feeling goes off, you can actually trust it. It's literally a gift that we have, but all of us have ignored it. And then obviously, once we are in a narcissistic relationship, it gets overwritten over and over and over again. And then we end up not trusting ourselves at all. Right. So that one definitely first indication. If you are questioning it right now, you already know. One thing that also every narcissistic abuse survivor has said and felt at some point is I'm walking on eggshells all the time. If somebody says that or feels that way with another person, that's a very high indication that you're dealing with a narcissist, because narcissists hot and cold, right? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You never know which version you get. And then we get so afraid of unleashing the monster, right? That we then start to compromise on our behaviors, our needs, our values. But when we are so inauthentic in ourselves, right? Then obviously it causes a lot of anxiety. And if you are around a person, and that can also be a boss or work colleague or a family member, it literally doesn't matter. If you walk around walk on eggshells around a person, something is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So very, very clear indication. And by the way, Tiffani, I love actually that you asked how do you recognize that you are dealing with a narcissist, rather than like how do I know what a narcissist is, because it's so easy to find excuses for other people's behaviors. So I can easily give you like a whole list of red flags that we all know anyway. And then we find an excuse, they might have had a bad day at work. They're so stressed. That's why they treat us badly. However, the way you asked, and obviously how I'm answering right now, those are all things that are happening for us inside ourselves. There is no denying of it. This is actually happening. There is no excusing it away. And that's why it's really important, I think, that we talk about things like that in this way, rather than focusing, on the narcissist. Another indication, yeah.
It's interesting that you said that about the red flags, because I think I've read and seen information. It's like there's no way you can know you're dealing with a narcissist. I've heard that, and you've pointed out that that's not true. And in my experience, there were definitely red flags, and I did exactly what you said. Mm-hmm. I made excuses because it's almost like I built this individual up into the fantasy of what I wanted him to be. And that's the fantasy that he helped me to build. I mean, I will admit that. But the interesting thing is, since I was a child, I always had a nervous tick. And when I was with this man, that nervous tick was out of control. I had all this anxiety that I couldn't seem to pinpoint. I'd just be like, something seems off. And my friends recognized that something was off. And they would point things out to me like, you shouldn't feel this way in a relationship. I don't feel like he accepts you for your authentic and true self. I mean, they were pointing out these red flags, and I'm seeing them, maybe not right away, but they quickly became apparent. And I just made excuse after excuse after excuse because of the way I fell so quickly and so hard, because he really did do a lot of work. I just think he was very skilled at finding out what my needs were and making sure he presented himself as the solution to all my needs. And I fell for it. you
Of
know?
course. And that's only natural, right? I mean, we all
Yeah.
want to be loved. We all want to belong. It's a very basic human desire, and there's nothing wrong with that. But of course, if we have some faulty programming running in the background, then obviously, you have your history, I have my history. We are preconditioned because we have a faulty program or various faulty programs running in the background. And then, of course, the narcissist feeds right into that. That's the carrot, right? That I was referring to.
Yeah, yeah. And they sort of formulate the carrot based on those needs. And I'm glad you brought up the faulty programming,
Mhm.
because, it's funny because I had a friend, still a friend at the time, and she was the one who picked up the quickest on his behavior and just kept warning me. Like, very concerned warnings were coming my way. And the one thing I could say about this friend is that she was an extremely psychologically healthy individual. She had a very good sense of self-worth. She had a good upbringing, a good childhood. She's very well balanced in her life. And so it was easy to see. And she's like, I would never go out with a man like this.
Right.
And I thought about that in retrospect after the relationship was over. I thought, okay, now I'm not, you do get somewhat victimized when you're in these relationships, but I didn't want to continue that victim stance. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to live in that state of feeling like a victim and like I've been destroyed, I've been ruined. I wanted to take personal responsibility for where I didn't see the red flags, so I didn't do this again, because it is a habit and a pattern for people to just continue to go from one of these relationships to another because of that programming back there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and when I looked at it in reality, a lot of the things that he said to me, demeaning things, I actually believed before I even entered into that relationship.
Right. Because if you hadn't, you wouldn't have put up with somebody talking you that way, treating you that way. You would have just gotten up and walked away. Right.
Exactly.
And I mean, with the whole faulty it sounds a bit weird. A faulty program is if there is something not quite right with us. But the thing is, we all have them. Like everybody has faulty programs running, faulty conditioning, outdated conditioning that maybe served a purpose at some point, but doesn't anymore now. It's just completely normal. And the beautiful thing is that you can literally run an update on those programs like you would run an update on a computer, right? It's our operating system. And sometimes we just need a little update. And that's the beautiful thing about healing work. And there are so many nice modalities that are actually available that make really deep, profound changes. And I don't think that that's offered enough, because if you think about most abuse survivors, they look for help, they're written off as crazy women, right? I mean, that's a label that's been created since the beginning of time. Um, but actually, none of us are. And if we are struggling with those patterns, if we are struggling with our mental health, if we find ourselves in relationships like that over and over again, actually, at the end of the day, it is an invite to really look at ourselves and see, hold on a second, what's not working here for me? And that comes then down to taking responsibility for ourselves, because, of course, what has happened to us is not our fault, right? However, the healing is still our responsibility. And that's really key to any kind of healing work in whatever way you decide to do it. You need to take responsibility for your healing and for your well-being. And that really needs to be priority number one, which may well be the first time in your life, but now is the time. And unless we actually allow ourselves to treat ourselves well, there won't be the results that you're looking for. And also, right, we want to be treated well by other people. We want to be loved by other people. It all starts with ourselves. right? And that's one of those faulty programs that's running there, right? Because a lot of people that get drawn in by narcissists are helpers, are rescuers, right? Want to save other people, always put other people's needs before our own. And that is a program that really needs an update, because there is a way of caring about people and helping people, but without actually sacrificing ourselves. And you and I both, we've done it. And people that are listening right now have done it, are doing it right now. So it just needs a little update. That's all.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I always tell clients that what can be programmed in can be programmed out. And then we can
Exactly.
install a new program into the brain, a new way of thinking and acting and doing the world. And when that happens, you won't accept that treatment anymore. Like now,
Absolutely.
I mean, and you could probably say the same thing. Once that healing occurs, that sort of relationship becomes unappealing to you. Like
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
would recognize it. I'm going to cut that off immediately. If I were single, that's what I would do. I'd be on date one even and be like, nope, I'm going with my intuition on this one.
Yeah, you learn to trust your intuition, which was right from the get-go anyway. And also when we do our healing work, like really from the inside out, not in the cognitive function. I'm not talking about reading everything about narcissists and narcissistic abuse and figuring them out and analyzing them and trying to beat them at their own game. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to like real, true, deep healing. And that's the only way how this carrot becomes unappealing to us. But what will also happen is that we become unappealing for narcissists because they have nothing to hook into, they have nothing to take from us. And it's not like narcissists disappear from the face of the earth, right? I mean, once you become aware of this topic, they are literally everywhere. But what changes is that you are kind of like moving on different levels, like your path may still overlap at times, but only in a fleeting motion, not like how it has been, where it was like a magnet, right? Like being that narcissist magnet, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And that's, I think, why it's so important to take responsibility for our healing, to put the work in and, ask for help, exploring different modalities. It actually turns into quite fun as well, which sounds ridiculous if you're listening to this right now and you're going through it. But once you realize how much power you actually hold over yourself and the things that you can do, and that you can literally hold on to everything that you really love about yourself and let go of everything that doesn't serve you any longer, it's the most incredible realization that you will have in your life, because that changes everything, you know? And that's also because they will never change. They don't have awareness. They will never realize that there's something wrong with them, even if they pretend to. They're not putting the action in to change anything anyway. We also cannot change what has happened, but what you can do is really um, change how you feel about it and weed out your own garden to ensure that won't happen again in the future. And it's by far the most liberating gift that you can make yourself.
Oh, that's awesome. I've noticed there's a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of social media propaganda, that's what I'll call it, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
about how to live with a narcissist. And I understand
No,
it can be difficult. If you've got kids with a narcissist, it's not just an easy decision to walk away. There's more
no,
involved in walking
no,
away. But
no,
I feel like
no.
um, to now you tell me if I'm wrong. I guess I'm putting
Mm-hmm.
this to you as a question. To continue to live with a narcissist, I mean, to me, almost feels like you're continuing to allow yourself to be abused. And to walk away, to do whatever you have to do to walk away. And I'm not downplaying how difficult the situation some women are in,
Mm-hmm.
and men too. But to walk away is a supreme act of self-love. You
Absolutely.
have to
And
protect yourself.
I am very clear on this, and one thing to always keep in mind, I mean, walking away by far is the most difficult thing you will ever do in your life. 100%. One thing we need to remind ourselves, however, is that part of the abuse is the illusion that's being created that we cannot survive without the other person, right? It's part of the trauma bonding. And the trauma bond is very powerful in itself, right? Because that's actual chemical reactions in the brain. We're talking about hormones, we're talking about a chemical dependency, right? So that's one thing that's playing there. Then, of course, there may be actual physical threats as well. So, whatever it is that you need to do to be able to leave, you got to do. Of course, do your research, put a safeguard in place. However, the only solution is to leave. There is no way in the world to actually play the narcissist game. You can gray rock as much as you like. You still feel like, I don't know if I can say shit.
You can say shit.
um,
Say anything you want.
like there is so much life and joy and love out there in the world. So, what benefit does anyone get out of staying with a narcissist? You're losing out on living a very authentic and fulfilling life that you actually deserve. And of course, there are very complicated situations. I mean, I work with this every day, and every one of us literally has a story straight out of the movies. Like, most people only know this from Netflix. And for us, it's actually real life. However, the only way is to go no contact. And yeah, actually, it is the only way. And of course, if there are children involved, some people have businesses together, legal proceedings that are ongoing. There are still ways to modify the contact to such an extent that you still provide a safe space for yourself to allow the healing to happen. And there is no happiness, there is no healing as long as you stay in touch with the abuser. And that is a fact. Like, you can literally have the best therapist in the world, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that addictive element. I think it's not just an issue in narcissist relationships. I mean, I think I'm not an expert in biochemistry, but I do understand that when you fall in love, there's a certain biochemistry. But it seems to cross over into the realm of addiction with a narcissist. Talk just a little bit about why that occurs.
Yeah, it's not only with a narcissist. I mean, you mentioned religious cults earlier on. It can be between a parent and a child. Like, trauma bonding can happen in any kind of relationship where the power dynamic is off, where it's really one-sided. And when we talk about a narcissist and a relationship with a narcissist, it's nothing like a normal relationship, right? So in a normal relationship, you would meet somebody, you would slowly get to know them, you would slowly start trusting them, right? Trust develops over time. And then you may come to the decision, oh, yeah, that's working out. Let's give this a go. And everything becomes a bit more transactional. Everybody assumes their roles within the relationship. And of course, over time, one or both partners can become absent. Maybe it can turn abusive. It is possible, it doesn't have to. But a relationship with a narcissist is very, very different, because that natural flow of how human relationships are built is completely skipped. So with a narcissist, it creeps in with a smiling face, right, under the pretense of true love and really immense trust. And from there, it really goes straight into abuse. Like, it's literally like a switch. And of course, we don't even know what's happening to us at the time, because our brain cannot comprehend it.
Yeah.
So when we meet a narcissist, they create the soulmate illusion. They're everything we ever wanted. It's maybe the first time ever we experience true love, or what feels like true love, because it isn't, but it feels like true love. So the love bombing, right? Making us feel so special, putting us on a pedestal. We feel seen, we feel heard, we feel loved, we belong, like everything that we truly deeply desire. And of course, and everybody who knows, who's been in love knows, being in love is literally the highest high there is, right? Like love, being in love makes anything possible. So you have a lot of dopamine that's being released in the brain, a lot of oxytocin, like forming deep connections. And under normal circumstances, that's a good thing. Those hormones are good. However, when we're dealing with a narcissist, because everything is so extreme, our brain actually becomes overexposed with those chemicals, with those hormones, because it's so extreme. And then all of a sudden they switch, right? And we don't recognize this loving, caring, affectionate person that all of a sudden is like this cold and cruel monster. And very naturally, our body will go into like a stress response, right? Because it's literally like a shock to the system. So all the dopamine leaves, the oxytocin leaves, but then what comes in? It's a serotonin. It's the cortisol, right? That's coming in, and it's flooding the body. And we are in the stress response. Our brain goes on high alert. And then when it happens for the first time, the natural reaction is you try to get out, right? Now, when we deal with a narcissist, the mask comes back on, and all of a sudden, they are this perfect person again, right? That give us everything that we ever wanted. So what happens? Oxytocin comes in, dopamine comes in. I'm getting. Can we cut that? I think we need to.
Sure, you can backtrack. Go ahead. I know I distracted you by coughing. I was trying not to, so I tried to mute myself, but it's still distracting. So
We need to cut that out, but I think I got my hormones wrong. So let me write this down.
Okay. I'm gonna grab a drink while you're doing that.
Serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine.
I talk a lot about hormones with clients, and I tell them I'm not a biochemist, so I'm doing the
cortisol.
best I can. Yeah.
Serotonin is a good hormone.
It's a happy hormone.
Oxytocin is a happy hormone.
Yeah, that's a love hormone.
Dopamine is a happy.
Yep. It's a motivation.
Cortisol and
epinephrine, stress.
And what else? Cortisol and
there's one other one I'm trying to think. Cortisol, epinephrine are the two I talk about most with clients, but I just say stress hormones, which are putting us in in the limbic brain, which is interesting too, because once you go into that fight or flight, your ability to reason in the neocortex kind of diminishes, and you're in survival mode, clinging and attaching to whatever it is you feel you need to survive. While you're thinking, I'm going to go grab some water.
Yeah, what threw me?
I'm not sure. We can pick up
adrenaline.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go grab some water.
Yeah. And then I'll say that again. So when we meet a narcissist, obviously in the very beginning, they are the soulmate, right? It's like our experience of what we believe true love to be. It's not, but it really feels like that. And what happens with all the love bombing when they come in and they put us on this pedestal, they make us feel so special. They make us feel seen and heard and loved and belonging and everything, right? So what happens in the brain is that all those happy love chemicals, hormones come rushing in, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. And under normal circumstances, that would be a good thing, because obviously those hormones, they help us to connect with people, to bond with people. They make us feel good. Now, the problem with the narcissist is that when this happens, because it's so extreme, our brain actually gets overexposed with those chemicals. And then we get hooked because it just feels so good. So it's not your fault. It really is like the highest high there is. And everybody who's ever been in love knows that love is the highest high. And if you're actually dealing with a narcissist, it's even higher than that. So, not your fault. It's a chemical reaction in the brain. And then all of a sudden the mask comes off, right? And that loving and caring and affectionate person that you thought you knew all of a sudden turns into this cruel, cold monster that you don't recognize. Now, that's a complete shock to the system. It's very confusing, and our brain naturally, and the body as well, goes into a high alert state to protect ourselves, and then in a very natural stress response. So all those happy chemicals leave the brain. Instead, we have the adrenaline that rushes in. We have the cortisol that rushes in because we are in such a high stress situation. And when it happens for the first time, most people try to walk out, right? Because we're not allowing ourselves to be treated that way. So what happens? The narcissist puts the mask back on, and all of a sudden they're this amazing person again. And the person that gives us everything that we ever wanted. So what happens in the brain? Dopamine comes back in, oxytocin comes back in, serotonin comes back in, and we stay. And for a while, it's working out, but then it's starting all over again. And usually each cycle becomes worse and worse and worse. So in the brain, it's this constant intermittent reinforcement of reward and punishment, right? Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, happy, loved, feeling on top of the world. Next minute, in a high stress response. And it's like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And what that actually does is it creates a chemical dependency in the brain, because everything you're craving for is feeling good again. And that is something I think every single abuse survivor needs to understand, because you can really cut yourself some slack here. Those are chemical reactions in the brain. You have no cognitive control over that. They are very natural processes that happen in the body, right? I think it's also something that every therapist should understand. Every coach that works with abuse survivors, every therapist, every medical doctor, because that explains why an abuse survivor cannot just walk out. That explains why time won't heal all wounds, because we are actually dealing with an addict, right? And of course, when we think about addiction, we think about drugs and alcohol, but we don't need substances to create chemical reactions in the brain. And that's exactly what's happening here. And it's also what gives the narcissist basically complete power over us, complete control over us, right? Because if you think about it, they're not only the drug, they're the drug dealer at the same time.
Wow.
And remember when you asked me earlier, how do I know that I'm in a narcissistic relationship or have been in a narcissistic relationship? One thing that every single abuse survivor says, and I know I've said it, especially in the beginning when I didn't have the language to express what was happening to me, is I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like an addict, or he or she is my heroin, he or she is my drug. Every single narcissistic abuse survivor has said that or thought that, because we can't explain our own reactions. Like, what's this desperation, and then all of a sudden not being functioning. I remember I literally, like, when he wasn't around, I would be physically shaking and I wasn't able to do anything at all. And it was so untypically me, but actually it's just a physical response, an emotional response to the situation that we are in. And I think actually that this is the key to understanding narcissistic abuse and also the recovery, because obviously that's where, when we're looking for help, that's where we need the tools that will disconnect that trauma bond to be able to be functioning again.
Oh, and you just basically described, my voice is getting really off from having a cold, I apologize. You just described my experience so well. I've had it, I'm exiting the relationship, the misery, and then the carrot is being dangled again.
Yeah.
And I'm going back. And I did that 5 or 6 times. And all the time I did it, in my mind, I'm going, what is wrong with me? Why do I keep, and my friends, my family, everyone is looking at me going, they can't comprehend why I would go back to something like that. And I couldn't comprehend why. It didn't make sense to me at the time. Now, in retrospect, knowing what I know, it makes perfect sense. But especially if you don't have a lot of experience with that, or even if you grew up in a home with a narcissistic parent or sibling, it can be, you can be so used to that pattern that you don't even understand what's going on. And that's why it's so important to have that knowledge of what is happening in the brain.
And really, like, to everybody who's listening and is giving themselves a hard time, and by nature, all of us that are in those situations, we are usually quite hard on ourselves, right? And one thing I've gone through and what I see in every single one of my clients is this anger directed at ourselves for allowing this to happen. And I'm here to tell you, it really wasn't your fault. Like, you literally did the best you could with what you had at that particular point in time. Now, you didn't know about narcissists. You weren't consciously aware of your faulty programs. You weren't even thinking about chemical reactions happening in your brain, you know? And it really is important to understand that there is nothing wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything you could with what you had to navigate the situation. And I think that also plays into the, you know, when we are then labeled as like crazy women because we're struggling with our mental health, because we're emotionally unstable, because we have difficult to control emotions, that falls into the same aspect, I think, because we are being told there is something wrong with us, when in reality, it's just a very normal reaction of our mind and our body to an extremely abnormal situation. And everybody who's really beating themselves up right now, I just want you to pause for a moment and really surround yourself with all this love and compassion that you do have, that you tend to give somewhere else, and really take a moment to recognize that none of this was your fault. Actually, now you understand a little bit better why you've behaved in certain ways, and that it's completely normal. And yeah, just really take a moment to pause and acknowledge how far you've actually come, and what a fighter you are, because I think it's just very, very important. There's nothing wrong with you at all. You know,
And
you're
even just that recognition,
navigating. Yeah.
That recognition that this is what I've been through. That's the important first step of just understanding that it's letting yourself off the hook for that. Because I think our friends and family often stare on incredulously and go, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And then in retrospect, we ask ourselves that question. We beat ourselves up. I should have been smarter than that. I should have seen it coming. I should have walked away sooner, but you can't, because you really are doing the best you can. And plus, in the situation I was in, I literally had the narcissist telling me that I had a mental health disorder. And this is a common theme in these sorts of relationships. You know, I developed, excuse me, I developed anxiety as a result of what I was experiencing. And then he turned that on me by saying, you have an anxiety disorder. Something's wrong with you. You're
that's part
desperate.
of the game, right? It's part of the game. And it's the same with the gaslighting, right? When all of a sudden everything you remember doesn't seem to be true anymore. And you go like, what? I said that? I did that? What? That doesn't even sound like me. Like, what are you talking about? And then we started questioning our own sanity. And literally the moment we go like, oh my God, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm going crazy. What are they going to do? They will reinforce that. They will like, see, I've been telling you, you're crazy. You're crazier than everybody else that I know. And then they really enforce that narrative. But because you're already questioning yourself anyway, the person you trust, because obviously you don't realize that they are the person who are causing the harm in the first place, right? Because they are the people who are supposed to be there for us, to support us, to love us, not to destroy us. So our brain doesn't comprehend that that's happening. But it's actually them who create this situation in the first place. We have a very natural response to it, and then they use that against us. So first we think we're losing our mind, we're going crazy. They reinforce that we are going crazy. Then we start behaving crazy. Everybody else believes that we are crazy. And then the crazy woman becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, when in reality, it actually was instigated to be exactly that. And then who believes a crazy woman, right?
Yeah.
So it's all part of the game.
And when you're that stressed out in a relationship all the time, you know, you're going to be in a state of fight or flight all the time. You're going to have
all
that
the time.
cortisol all the time. So you don't feel physically even right. I mean, I felt crazy. I lost my ability to concentrate, to focus on my work. When the relationship was going through the ending phase before the resurge, I would feel as if I couldn't function at all, like you had mentioned earlier. And then when he would put that mask back on and come back in, I would feel like all was right with the world. Now, all of a sudden, my biochemistry shifting. I feel happy again, you know, and then it would begin to deteriorate. And it was funny because another thing that I wanted to bring up, because I know this is common, is the fact that, you know, in the initial phases when that carrot is swinging in front of your face and you're thinking, I have found the man or woman of my dreams, or I've got the best job ever, wherever you are running into that narcissist, that fantasy becomes that drug for you. And then it's hard to admit, it was for me, that when that mask came off and there I was, it was hard for me to point the finger at him because he was pointing the finger at me. And there was this part of me that thought, I don't want to lose what I thought I had. And so if it's me, I can fix me. And then I can still have what I thought I have. But if I admit that he's the problem, he's not going to change, then there's no hope. And I so wanted that fantasy in my mind that I just kept working on myself and trying to change what he wanted me to change. If I gained, if he said I was too thin, I would gain 5 pounds, but then I would be too fat. And then I would lose the 5 pounds and I'd be too thin again. And there was no pleasing him, but I kept dancing around this and twisting myself into a pretzel, trying to please someone, because it gave me that sense of all I have to do is find a way to change. And then I'll have that love back that was everything.
So, and that's very interesting, right? Because it's not about him at all. It never was. But he made you do all those things. In reality, nobody can make us do anything, right?
Right.
So you decided to do all of those things for the sake of love.
Yeah. What I
right?
thought was love. It wasn't
Well,
even
you
really
thought,
love.
yeah, right. But it doesn't matter, right? Because our brain, for you, it was real, right? We know now it wasn't. The experience wasn't, but the way you perceived it, it was completely real. So that's exactly where we then need to tap into the healing, right? That's how the actual healing work works. Because, yeah, we can talk about what he did and what he said and what you then did in response. But the thing is, we always feel something before we do something. We're emotional beings, right? We have there is no action without feeling something first. And all of this whole dynamic was about love, being loved, right? That's what you just said. So those are those things to actually, become aware of, because that's where the healing then taps in, because there is like a program that runs in the background where there is a lack of, and in your case, love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the carrot. So his carrot was love. Somebody else, I mean, it's always under the disguise of love, but it might be, being good enough, or whatever that carrot is. So when we talk about real healing, again, it's not about understanding the narcissist at all. It's about figuring it out, what it was that got us into the situation in the first place. And it has nothing to do with blame, right? Because you were talking about pointing the finger. It's not about that at all. It's just really asking ourselves, how did I end up in this situations? What did they offer me that I was so desperate for? Or what is it that took away that I wanted back so badly that I stayed? And it's very important, actually, when we ask ourselves those questions, that we don't ask ourselves why. You may have noticed that I said how and what, and because naturally language is on autopilot, right? But once we become aware of language, it's actually incredibly powerful. So when we ask ourselves, like, why me? For example, it's a very victim mindset, right? And of course, you're looking for an answer, but what you're already doing without having an answer is judging yourself, because why has a very judgmental connotation, right? So if we then actually rephrase, like, what is it that got me into trouble? What is it that they had to offer me? It's much more, it's neutral, it's open, and you can actually fill this space with compassion and allow your unconscious mind to produce an answer. If you ask yourself why, your unconscious mind feels judged and then goes on the defense and goes like, yeah, well, whatever, right? So anybody who is kind of exploring right now, just try that out for yourself and notice what difference it actually makes in the way you ask yourself your questions, in the way it makes you feel, and then also the answer that you get, which might actually be surprising.
So I think many of the listeners are wondering, okay, so I've been in a narcissistic relationship. What steps do I now want to take to heal? What are the steps to healing from such it's a traumatic experience?
Well, it's a very traumatic experience. And the first thing, of course, is to get out. And we already spoke about that. No contact is really rule number one of narcissistic abuse recovery. And there may be hundreds of reasons and excuses you come up with why no contact doesn't apply to you and your particular situation. I'm telling you, it still applies. And the beautiful thing with no contact, again, it's the hardest thing about all of this, going no contact. But the beautiful thing about it is it literally is self-care decision number one. And what it allows you to do is actually start navigating again, because the moment go no contact, you're cutting off your supply, right? That's why there's so much resistance. But the moment you do, it's literally like the poison is leaving your system. pretty much instantly. And what happens is that your nervous system is starting to regulate again, your brain fog will lift, and then you are actually able to navigate in a whole different way than before. So even though it's the hardest step to do, it has an incredible positive impact the moment you do it. So it is scary, but the moment you do it, everything will change. So that is the first step of healing. If you have a situation where you cannot go no contact, then really put safeguards in place to minimize the contact to an absolute minimum, only through third parties, maybe through parenting apps that are available. And there are options available that really allow you to protect yourself. A big part of the healing journey also, of course, is the realization of what's happening, right? And it's very natural that once it clicks what you're dealing with, that you will study everything you can find. You probably become rather obsessive about it. And I haven't met a single abuse survivor, narcissistic abuse survivor, that couldn't write a PhD on narcissistic abuse. And it's part of the healing journey. Because we're brainy people, we have to please our conscious mind. And of course, what has happened to us is so out of this world. Of course, we're desperate to understand what we're dealing with. Now, there will be a point where you have all the knowledge you need. And I'm very intentionally saying you need, not all the knowledge that's out there, because literally every day somebody comes up with something new. Like, I'm not even looking anymore. There will be a point where you know everything you need to know. And then it's time to level up, because then it's time to really explore practical approaches, taking it out of the cognitive function and doing the deeper healing work. And then really proactively putting the work in. And without that, healing isn't possible, because healing from trauma, from complex trauma, never happens in the cognitive function. It cannot. That's how you have so many people able to write a PhD on the topic, but they're still struggling with their mental health. They're still hanging on to their life. They still go back to new narcissistic relationships or old ones. So nothing has actually changed despite having all this in-depth knowledge. And that's why it's very important to then dig deeper. And I would just really encourage everybody to be curious and explore things. There are so many beautiful modalities nowadays that are very effective, like hypnosis, like NLP, havening techniques. And it's a mix and match of various different things, and whatever, breath work, Reiki, yoga, there's the mind, there is the body, and healing is holistic, right? It impacts every level of our body, and in our mind, our being. And it's very important that we do that we have this holistic approach as well, because the narcissistic abuse also damaged us on every single level of our being. So it's really putting ourselves back together as a whole. And that's where the transformation happens, where the change work happens. And the beautiful thing about that is when you do deep level healing work, you don't need to force you to be different, to behave different, to not fall into traps, because the change work happens on such a deep level that it literally becomes automated. So things are just different. And that's exactly how we want change work to happen, right?
So you're basically working with the subconscious mind at that point, right?
Yes, and you need to, because the damage is also caused on such a deep level. And we talked about unconscious programs that we have running in the background. We can only access them on that level. And that's why I'm a big fan of hypnosis, not only because it's deeply relaxing, which is such a beautiful, nice experience for somebody who's been in such a high alert state for such a long time, just to realize that you still have the ability to feel this calm and this relax and being able to let go, the mind and the body really is craving this sensation because it's been such a long time. It also obviously helps to stabilize the nervous system. And when we do this kind of work that stabilizes the nervous system, we also become responsive. We become response able, right? Whereas before, when we're in a high alert state, we're very reactive. You know, everything is just like a snap reaction based on an emotional trigger that we are feeling.
And it's interesting because the reason I got into working with the subconscious mind through hypnosis was that relationship that I was in. I was so just distraught after that, and I was just looking for answers. And I went to a weekend seminar on the subconscious mind, and I learned about the programming that led me to where I am, where I was today, then. And then I was just so enthralled with the subconscious, and I wanted to learn everything I could because I had tried the therapy. Not that I'm downing all therapies at all by any means, but I tried working with my conscious mind through meditation, through reading books, through, you know, gaining information. And it just wasn't having the impact. I wasn't healing until I began to access the subconscious because, you know, ultimately I had beliefs in my subconscious mind programmed in by experiences from my past. And then those beliefs led that relationship to look acceptable to me to begin with. And then I developed some other related negative beliefs about myself and about life from that trauma experience of being in the relationship. You know, and those I recognized at that point they were housed in the subconscious. They're not healthy. And if I continue to think and believe this way and feel this way about myself, my life isn't going to change. And I recognized that I needed to make those shifts on a deeper level because the work I was doing previously wasn't working. And that ultimately led me to, when I saw the change created in my life, I wanted to help others. So I left physical therapy to be a hypnotherapist. And I know you left your career somewhat and delved into that field to help others as well. And this has been a brilliant conversation. I am so thankful for all the knowledge that you've had to share. It's been so valuable. So let the listeners know how they can get in touch with you. If they want to learn more about what you do and working with you, where can they find you?
My website is roniafraser.com. You will also be able to find a free ebook on the website where it's all about the recovery journey. And I developed a framework, a timeline, because obviously I know how it's just this whirlwind of nothingness that we get thrown into. So I developed this framework to really provide you something to grab hold on to. And you will be able to actually see how far you've already come, which is most likely so much further than you think you are. And it will also give you a bit of an idea of what lies ahead of you. And as we already said, you know, it's everything that you are going through right now is normal. So that's a free ebook you can find on the website. Of course, I'm on social media. Rock and Roll Coach Ronnie is my handle on Facebook, on Instagram. So give me a follow there. I post regular content. And you can check on Amazon as well. If you type in my name, I just released a workbook, Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Workbook. It's called Me, Myself, and I. It's very practical. It's a little self-care buffet that I created for you to really help you move forward and shift your focus, because energy flows where the attention goes. And every single day, I will teach you a little tool that you can try out and put in your toolbox, and it's designed to help you find back to you after narcissistic abuse.
Thank you so much. And I'll also put all of those links in the show notes for you. So if you want to get in touch with Ronia, you'll be able to do that simply by clicking on those links and taking advantage of her wisdom and expertise.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. It has been my pleasure.
As we come to the end of another episode of A Transformed Life, I want to express my gratitude to you for joining me on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, I encourage you to subscribe to my podcast and share it with your friends and family. You can also find me on YouTube at A Transformed Life with Tiffani Cappello. And if you're seeking personalized support on your journey to inner peace, please visit my website at tiffanicappello.com to learn more about my one-on-one transformational hypnosis sessions and group coaching programs. You will find the link in the show notes. Together, we'll uncover and resolve the underlying subconscious roots of your anxiety, paving the way to true peace of mind. Your time and attention are precious, and I am truly honored that you chose to spend them with me today. Until next time, may you continue to find lasting peace through the power of your subconscious mind.